What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. Tonight is a late one. It's about midnight where I'm at, but it's about 12 in the afternoon where these guys are at. These guys are in Australia, the land down under the home theater engineering team YouTube channel. What's up, guys?
How are you guys?
How's it going?
Thanks for that intro, mate. How are you? It's 12 o'clock here. Time for lunch soon.
So
Lunch for you and nighttime for me. So what's new? What are we doing tonight?
Andrew?
We've just been running around today. I'm actually sitting in a cinema that we finished a year ago. I've just come here to do a touch-up, and I've stolen some time to do this.
I saw that heavy door behind you when you closed it.
Yeah.
Look pretty thick.
That's pretty cool. We just finished off another cinema yesterday, so yeah, we're flat out at it. So good fun.
So tell the viewing audience who you guys are and what you guys do.
Enzo.
Yeah, so obviously home theater engineering. We've got our own YouTube channel. Andrew and myself joined forces a few years ago, and our mission was always to kind of help educate the masses and trying to give a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of help where we can. Obviously building reference certified cinemas is what we do down under. Started off as a little hobby here in Perth, Australia, which is the most isolated city in the world. But that obviously with YouTube grew to a bit of a demand all the way across Australia. And then obviously our room design service is a kind of blew up on a global scale. So we're starting to do room designs on a reference certified room designs on a global scale now, with jobs in America and New Zealand and Europe and all over the place. So we tend to work around the clock at the moment.
Speaking of room design, I believe you had an idea for future subscribers to your channel.
I did. We had a conversation about this. So what I was thinking is anyone that watches your channel can jump over to our channel and subscribe. And Andrew and myself, in a couple of weeks, will pick someone that's obviously subscribed in the most recent weeks. That obviously follows yourself, because that's the obvious key there. And we'll give away a room design to someone, and that's valued at $2,000 Australian, which is about $1,500 US, roughly. And that's whether it's a new room that's about to be built or someone that has even an existing room. But yeah,
That's worth a lot of. Oops, sorry. That's worth a lot of
yeah,
coin.
a lot of spare
think
change.
Our philosophy grew from the fact that we'd seen other rooms built, and we'd have the same experience with our own rooms, and we felt that there was a missing ingredient. And for us, that missing ingredient is not the components, but the way the components are put together. Much like you can take car parts and you can put them together, but it's just a car. You need to tune it, tweak it. You need to, get the components operating in the right way together. You need the right mixture and so on and so forth to get premium performance. And it's always been my belief that it's the knowledge and the application of that knowledge that makes, whether it's a two-channel system or a multi-channel system, really sing and dance. If you just delivered a bunch of boxes into a room, it's not going to do much. If you put them on the wall, it does a bit more. And one of the things is that, for a long time, we've been probably not exposed to really good video and sound. So if someone buys a bunch of boxes and just gets it installed, and as long as you've got picture and sound, job's done. And we just don't feel that's the case. We feel that, any performance that's left out of that equipment that's lying on the floor belongs to you. You've paid for that, so let's extract everything we can out of the processors, the amplifiers, the speakers, and the system. And that's the philosophy that we've grown the business on. It's how do we deliver the absolute most that we can in that environment for our customers, so that they get, total bang for their buck. And it's a formula that's worked really well. I finished a room yesterday, and you should have seen the faces on the people. They couldn't believe the result that they've got. And that was with some, pretty standard equipment, to be honest. And it absolutely shines. So that's the philosophy we've built home theatre engineering on, and we see design and implementation of knowledge as just another component. It's like a loudspeaker, it's like an amplifier or processor. The application of knowledge and design is just another component.
Right. And you're
I think
gonna.
I think a lot of people also forget that that exists. You know, a lot of these box moving style businesses are very quick to just sell a box, and they don't really. You know, there's other stuff, that acoustic panels and calibration and all that they forget about, and they're missing out on obviously benefiting from that. So it's definitely something that we've obviously wanted to focus definitely on.
So I got actually, just so you guys, if you guys are gonna go to their channel and subscribe, make sure you mention that you're coming from my channel so they know that you've watched this stream. So it's easier for them to pick a winner rather than just picking one of their old random subscribers. They need you guys, the new subscribers to their channel. So make sure you subscribe over there, leave a comment in any of their videos, look at the little ping, just saying, hey, we came from Spare Change. Enter me.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love to have you on board.
So I took a few questions from my Patreon guys. Only 5 questions. One question I have from one of my patrons. How do you choose the right speakers for your home theater?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. Really, one of the most defining things, to be quite honest, is budget. You know, you have to know where you're going and what your limit is. Once you know what your budget is, you know what fits within that. From there, we start to apply various decisions. So you've got X amount of dollars to spend. The next thing is, how many channels are we going to have? And from that, then we break that into the budget as well. And then we start to look at things like distances from the seating position, amplifiers, amplifier power, sort of speakers behind the screen. This is one of the harder things for people to perhaps comprehend, is that designing a room is a circular argument. So you have to anchor something which is often your seating position. Okay, so once you get the seating position, okay, how far away are my left and right speakers? How far away are my front speakers? What sort of speaker design do I need to get SPL? You know, you want 105 dB SPL at your listening position, so you've got your full dynamic range. So it always seems for us to come back to design, and that's how we choose our speakers. So, you know, I don't know if that answers the question, but there's a lot of thought that goes into that at the end of the day.
But the biggest thing you think is budget, though. It's your money. I think it's going to be your budget.
It's the limiting factor, isn't it? I mean, we can turn around to someone and say, look, buy these speakers and put in this number. And if they say, well, I can't afford it, well, that's not going to happen. If you've got an unlimited budget, then that changes things a little bit, but we're not often in that position. So I think it's important to say, well, let's look around this area, and from there we can start to pare away what we need. You know, are we going to do is it a 5-channel system? Is it an 11-channel system? How many Atmos are we doing? And, you know, are we going in wall, on wall, in ceiling, on ceiling, behind the screen? There's so many questions that go into that actually end up making the room work really, really well. And this is really what brought us to this whole thing of room design. It's, you know, we need these answers. So, you know, if you are sitting a long way from a speaker, that speaker needs to produce a lot of power to get clean sound, undistorted sound to your listening position. And then, you know, we consider things like dispersion angle and all that sort of stuff. So it's actually probably one of the harder questions to answer. And that's why, you know, we go through this process of, you know, how big's your room? Where are your seats? How many seats are there? You know, and then that starts to give us answers as to, you know, again, how far are the speakers from the listening position? How many people are going to sit there? You know, are we just catering for one seat? Are we catering for 4 in a row? What do we do about the people on the left-hand side? Because if they just get that surround speaker in their ear, they've got an exit door effect. So
is there you got a mic level on your mic there? Can you jack up your mic a little bit?
Jack it up a bit? Yeah, sure. Hang on a second.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
How's that? Is that any better?
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, I hope that helps, but it's not normally, we don't have necessarily one particular brand. We have brands that we like because we know that they deliver, but it's all got to fit like a glove. So
Do you think there's any specific characteristic you should look at for a speaker? Or is that just like a personal thing? I've seen some videos where it's like you need to like focus on the perfect speaker has this specific characteristic that you need to have.
what I look for a lot and what we actually measure in speakers is off-axis sound, the quality of the off-axis sound. So the two things I'm really looking for is clean undistorted sound at 105 dB SPL at the seat. Can we deliver that? Okay, so yes, we can tick that box. Then the next one is what's the off-axis sound like? And we can actually measure that on a speaker. For those of you who haven't read it, Floyd Toole has a book called Sound Reproduction. Fantastic book. Get it, read it. It's a real education. Off-axis sound, of course, if you've got a speaker producing sound, the best sound comes straight out the front. And as we go off around the angles, the sound gets lower and lower in quality. And it's that bad off-axis sound that we're bouncing into the room and that then is coming back to the listening position, perhaps after a delay. So we're looking for well-designed speakers. Speakers with good horn designs, perhaps. Speakers with a nice dispersion pattern. Or if you're going up in design type, then looking at a line array speaker. And that is very helpful. If you're looking at doing a very high-end cinema, line arrays are great because they manage the sound pressure level from a distance. But yes, the answer is can they do clean undistorted sound from your sitting position, which why we look for something like a horn-loaded driver, often over a dome tweeter, not always, but often, and then good off-axis sound.
Which sounds like you're a fan of Crix and Procella because one has a waveguide, one has a horn. Am I correct?
This is true. Yeah, we love both of them for different reasons. There's a lot of good speakers out there, but in Australia, Crix delivers some really nice designs, and it's a reliable product with great support. Of course, the manufacturers here, and the guys at Crix are phenomenal. And the same thing with Procella. Procella's got a great reputation around the world, especially in sort of selected listening rooms and cinemas. And again, we get great support from those guys. And again, really good design. And they are purpose-built, to basically roll off and hand over the 80 hertz. They don't try and do any more than that. And so they do what they do very well. They put all that power, energy, and clarity into everything 80 hertz and upwards. So, they're ideal for multi-channel cinema.
So how do you feel about that 80 hertz crossover? Do you not feel that there are certain soundtracks where a gun blast in the left back speaker would benefit from a lower crossover rather than just sending it straight to the subwoofer? Do you ever find that?
That's a really good question. If your room is set up properly and your subwoofers are well established and they have been integrated into the system properly and well aligned, then no, because you're asking a speaker to deliver a lot of energy, and the way we hear things, we associate the high frequency sound with the low frequency sound with the high frequency source. So the proviso to that is no, providing your subwoofers are properly set up and integrated, then you will hear that bass come from over there. If you then take that to the next level, which is something like a Trinov, you can actually have subs around the room, and you can actually associate those with the particular speakers, which then they become the bass driver for that zone or that channel perhaps. But no, I think we've tried various things like this, and at the end of the day, you're asking that speaker to deliver a lot of power at frequencies. It's probably, depending on the speaker design, perhaps not designed to deliver. Give it to a subwoofer, let it do it properly. If you can localize a subwoofer, in other words, if you can tell where it's coming from, you haven't done your job. It's not properly integrated. It should sound like it's coming from whichever speaker is providing the high frequency clues or cues for that sound. So, and that's the way it's mixed in the studio too. They're assuming that the speakers are crossed over at 80 hertz. You know, they don't expect them to do any lower anyway.
Yeah.
Although my understanding is that IMAX enhances full range all speakers. Am I correct on that?
Yes, yeah. There is a change in philosophy there. To be honest, we haven't dealt a lot with IMAX enhanced for the main reason that, you know, still a majority of the material out there isn't, and you have to kind of choose a team at the moment.
Yeah.
And with so much content out there being, you know, sort of legacy content, you then have to decide which way you're going to go, and, you know, are you going to run IMAX enhanced through your entire system? It's certainly something we look at, and it's an option in when we're building our cinemas. But traditionally, you know, that's the option we've gone with. And I think also, you know, again, you have to look at what you're asking of the system. You know, how much amplification do you need? What sort of speakers do you need to drive all that energy at a lower frequency? If you're using just a multi-channel AVR, asking each speaker to produce all of those lower frequency sounds consumes a massive amount of energy. So the chances are you're not actually going to perform as well. So yes, you could do IMAX enhanced, and that's great, but your whole system has to be really designed around that. Your amps have to be capable, your speakers have to be capable, the whole thing has to be built from the ground up to be able to deliver that clarity and energy, dynamic range and power across the entire frequency range. So it's great, but it's got to be built that way. And again, you know, not all soundtracks are designed for that. So it's a decision point which you'd make at the beginning of a cinema design.
So you could go with like some P6s with the 10-inch subs attached to them, or not subs, but
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You could, you know, and that would come down to, again, what size cinema you're building, and you know, which philosophy you're going with. But, you know, again, they would be driven differently from the processors. So the bass drivers with the P6s would be obviously a separate channel and driven by something perhaps like a Trinov, if you know, or one of the new Anthems that's just come out. So yeah.
Speaking of Trinov and Anthem, how do you choose the correct AVR? How do you choose between an AVR or separates?
Do you want to do this one, Enzo? Or?
This is an interesting one because a lot of people ask us that question, and it's the one thing I don't like asking is it's always budget driven. Obviously, there's a very big difference between, especially here in Australia, between an AVR versus a Trinov processor, which is $24,000. Obviously, a Trinov is a far different experience and far different result. On considering how deep and how you can basically go really deep into that processor, but and a receiver is always going to be quite a limited product. But it is, for us, I always find it's very budget driven, because if someone's only got X amount of dollars of their budget, you know, you can't throw 80% of that away to a processor. But again, you know, we look at room size, what matches what, doing power calculations, factoring in distance. One of the reasons why I like Procella is the way that they rate their speakers at, you know, 2 meters from the, you know, at reference. I think you guys discussed that on your last video. You know, which makes it quite easy to kind of already start visualizing how someone's room's going to start looking. But, you know, picking the right AVR, I mean, there's so many, you know, over here, you know, budget conscious people will always look at stuff like your, I guess, Denon, NAD, Marantz type product. So they're not chewing a huge amount of their budget. And then essentially adding a power amp. I mean, we try and push people to always add a power amp, at least for the front LCRs, to try and free up that receiver a little bit if they're not looking at going to that level of spending, you know, $20 odd thousand on a processor. Because a lot of things people forget about, as soon as you go to a $20,000 plus processor, you need amps for all your speakers, and that just the cost just blows out. I think one job we just quoted recently, there's about 20 grand just in amps. But then in saying that, there's also some really good things like Arcam, you know, where their receivers have some power. Sorry, their processors have some power on them, receiver processor. But yeah, look, finding the right one is always very subjective as well.
I mean, given a choice, we would, if it was an unlimited budget, we'd go Trinov and power amps without a doubt. But just
all day long
in everybody's pocket, and our goal is to try and deliver a great experience, regardless. So again, such is life. We'd all like to be driving, I don't know, a Bugatti Veyron or a Tesla or whatever, but when it comes to the reality, we have to work within the client's guidelines. But that would be the target. The Trinov power amp combination would be the target, the goal, and then we work from there to fit in with the client's needs. And I think this comes back to another philosophy: do less well than more badly. So in other words, if you are trying to build a room and you're struggling on a budget, do really good 5.1, for example. Do that really well. Get full dynamic range. Get super clear sound. It will sound phenomenal. Don't try doing 11.4.6, for example, and then have to put in really bad speakers or not have enough power. Do what you do and do it well, and you'll really enjoy it. If everything's underrated and then you're pushing, to try and wring performance out of a system, you're likely to be clipping or distorting. It's not, it's going to be an underwhelming experience. Yeah. The job I finished yesterday is a 5.2 system, no Atmos, 5-channel, 2 subs. And it actually sounds really phenomenal, because all of the budget went into doing 5-channel really well. It just didn't really extend out to 7, 9, 11 channels and so on. But the result is fantastic. So my advice to people is, maybe plan for the future. Make sure perhaps pre-wire for what you want, and then have a goal, and maybe have a look for what you want in the future. But if you want a working cinema now, pick a system that you can afford to do well, and then you've got a good base. Those good speakers can stay there, and when you win your next lotto or whatever, you can add your next bunch of speakers or move up to a Trinov or whatever it is you're going to do. But do what you do well, as opposed to trying to have everything badly.
We've built some good, like really nice cinemas that me and Andrew have looked at each other and gone, wow, this has turned out really well. And that was just like, it was a MRX 1120 with a power amp and some Priscilla P6s and P5s. And you kind of go, this is still very good. I mean, we what did we watch? I think we watched Greatest Showman. And it was really impressed. And again, you can get some awesome results with an AVR and a power amp. But planning is definitely the key, that's for sure.
I think the other thing worth mentioning here is, and something we haven't really talked about, and the guys on our channel will know that we keep saying, look, the room is the boss. It will take control of your sound and your image if you let it. It will decide how your sound will sound. It will decide how your picture looks, especially if you're running a projector. So you can talk about which power amps I'm going to buy, which processor I'm going to buy, which speakers I'm going to buy. But if your room is a challenge and it's compromised, then, doing that, buying fancy cables is all effectively a waste of time. Yes, I mean, obviously, if you do buy better gear, the sound does improve slightly, but the more energy you put into a room, especially an untreated room, the more distortion you have, the more comb filtering you have, the worse the sound gets. The more you pour into it, the more it just bounces around. So, we are really big on saying to people, look, the components you need are design and planning. That's a component. You need acoustic treatment. That is a component. You need light control. That is a component. Just like every amp, every processor, every projector, every screen. If you don't think of those as components, you're going to end up with a substandard result. So, allow time, allow budget to do those things right. Treat the sound in your room properly, get that sound working, and you will have a phenomenal room, even if you've had to cut your budget a little bit somewhere along the line. But if you divert those funds to making the room behave itself and kind of beat it into submission and take control of it, as opposed to it imposing its influence on your equipment, then you're fighting a winning battle and you'll get a great result.
So, working within your budget, let's say you have $20,000 to spend on your whole home theater. Is there a percentage that you should allocate towards your electronics, your speakers, and then extraneous other stuff like lighting and seating and stuff like that?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, it was 20,000. I would say 15 to 20%. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Enzo. I'm pulling these numbers out of thin air. 15 to 20% probably on acoustic treatment. A lot of people do their own light control in the rooms, but sometimes that can be part of that. And then really the rest of the budget gets cut up between obviously projector and screen. At that price point, you're probably looking around sort of 10 grand for your screen and projector, and then the balance on your audio, or maybe I haven't quite got that right. I don't know. What do you think, Enzo?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I mean, 20K obviously Australian wise, you're in that territory of probably E-shift projectors with pretty basic screens, and then that rest of that percentage is nowadays $3,000 to $4,000 on a receiver automatically leaves you with whatever's left over for speakers. So very hard. Anything under $3,000 for a receiver is always going to be a bit hard to work with. Same with projectors. If you're in that space and you can only afford a $3,000 to $5,000 projector, that not much exists in that space. I think you've got BenQ and you've got the Epsons, and then that that big chunk of it. I mean, Andrew's always said to people, if you're on a limited budget, spend a bit more on the receiver so you never have to change it. Make sure it's got those extra channels. Make sure if you eventually if the end game is 11.4.4, make sure that receiver can do it, or make sure that the receiver can process it, because if it only has 9 channels, at least it can process 12 or 13, and just plan that way. But I think probably the acoustics always gets left out of the budget, and we always try and push people that we don't really do a room unless you're prepared to invest that money in acoustics. But yeah, I definitely would agree with Andrew there. I think probably a good 10 to 15% of that budget would be acoustics, and then you've got your 7 to 10 grand on projector and screen, and then that leftover is always going to be receiver and speakers.
Would you spend more money on speakers or the receiver?
Yeah, I see. Again,
I think the answer here is permanency.
Yeah, permanency, exactly.
What are you going to have to change in years to come? Speakers, if you get a good selection of speakers now, first of all, they're bolted on or into the wall or something else. You don't really want to keep ripping those out. And good speakers are good speakers. We haven't seen, radical, I mean, some people would argue, but effectively a loudspeaker concepts have remained fundamentally the same. Yes, there have been changes, but buying a good speaker that reproduces good sound will do that for a long time. So I would be inclined to say, look, your amplifier might change because of codecs and software, and especially HDMI. Curse you, HDMI. So you're more likely to have to change a processor in time, in years, whereas your speakers will probably stay. Your amplifiers will probably stay. So we urge people to look at investing into things that are going to stay in your room. So spend the money on good amps, spend the money on good speakers where you can, spend the money on acoustic treatment. That's not likely to change. But the things that are going to change are those that are technologically vulnerable. So they are going to be possibly projectors, possibly AVRs or processors. With, as we're now getting into FPGAs, did I say that correctly, and programmable systems, in theory we should have longevity, but we still see those evolving. But and of course marketing departments are always pushing new things. People are wanting to push us from 4K to 8K. They're wanting to push us from HDMI 2.0 to 2.1 and so on and so forth. So those things are vulnerable. So put the money into good speakers, put the money into good amps, and then consider carefully what you're going to do with the things. So your AVRs and processors and projectors are the things that are likely to change. You can give some thought to how you're going to do that. Do you start off with a cheap unit for now, knowing that you're going to save up your pennies and get one of the big guns, or do you just find the money and put the big gun in now? That's a personal question, but all of this always circles back to our belief in doing a room design and discussing with a professional all of these aspects, and then realizing that they're circular arguments. They always come back to one point in the room that then forces you to make all these other decisions, which then again is controlled by budget. So I'm not sure if I drifted off topic there, but
it makes sense. And speaking about allocating funds towards different items in your home theater, would you recommend for your home theater television or a projector?
I just had this conversation this morning with someone on the phone. It's funny because I don't know whether in Australia we have this mentality of bigger is better, and everyone wants this 150, 180 inch screen, and then they're running a projector that's got 1500 lumens or 1800 lumens, and they're really struggling with the image being quite dull and not hitting HDR. And the thing is that people need to understand that doing that calculation, and again having that room design done, or at least doing the research. I mean, you've got things like Projector Central, and your local AV guy should know this, but working out that 130, 120 inches pretty much the limit for something that's 1500 lumens to 1800 lumens, which I think Andrew will agree with. And if they really want something that bright and that colorful, then maybe they should be looking at a TV. I had a guy the other day who was disappointed with his 150 inch screen, but he was running a 1500 lumen projector. And was expecting it to look like a TV. So nowadays 100 inch, I think there's a 100 inch Sony that's coming out that's going to be 25 grand. It's not unreachable, but matching the right projector with the right screen. We've used some like a BenQ X12000H, which was voted as one of the best projectors under $30,000 ever reviewed. As being with a 150 inch screen, you're kind of pulling out some serious light. It's a light cannon, and someone could walk into that room and think it was a television. It's that good. But in a dedicated cinema, I mean, we've always installed projectors. Obviously, it's just nature of what we do. Some people opt for both.
I'm pretty single-minded on this one. If you're building a cinema, it's a projector, and I think there's two reasons in my head for that. One is a lot of us, and I'd be interested. I'd like to hear from the people watching this. I'd love to get your feedback. I think there's a kind of a romantic, I don't know if romantic's the right word, but a historical, emotional attachment to cinema. I remember my dad taking me to the cinema when I was a kid, and you've got that smoky stream of light hitting the screen. You've got the projector flickering, behind you. There's that kind of emotional attachment to cinema.
It's all part of the experience.
Yeah, and that's part of it, right? The second thing is, and I think this is really relevant, and a lot of people don't realise this, in the world that we live in, 90% of everything we look at is reflected light. If you see a cat walking down the street, The colours that we see off it is a reflected source. A car is a reflected source. A house is a reflected light source. A projector on a screen is a reflected light source, which is why I think we like the image. Whereas a TV is an illuminated or luminant light source, and that's why it's kind of harsh and bright, and look, it can look stunning and fantastic, but it's being illuminated at you. We don't see a cat walk down the street glowing generally, unless someone's done something funky to it. So I think there's a psychological aspect to building a cinema. I think there's kind of a romantic aspect to it, and I think there's this attachment to a reflected image, which is kind of softer and nicer, and we associate that with the movies and with the escapism and that willing suspension of disbelief. So, if someone comes to me and says, I want to build a cinema with a TV, I'm like, okay. If you have
I like Brian's comment in the comments. Absolutely, projectors are like time machines, taking you back to your childhood, and I think that's relevant with what you said, Andrew. At the end of the day, it's one of the reasons why we love using Barco projectors. There's that cinematic feel about them. It just reminds you of, when Andrew used to manage cinemas back then. It was right, Indiana Jones or I remember watching Jurassic Park at the cinema. And there's that connection that we automatically make. Part of the experience of this hobby is creating that memory and creating memories with family members. And the way COVID has forced a lot of these movie studios to ultimately go direct to, HBO or whatever it is, more people are building cinemas at home. And I think that experience of projection, like using projectors, you just don't experience with a TV.
I think if you compared, if you think of a TV in a lounge room, in a living space, white walls and metal and chrome and tiles or whatever you've got around the place, and watching a movie there, or you look at a classic either home cinema or a real commercial cinema with the warmth and the fabric and the chairs, and the lights go down, everything disappears, and you are immersed in the movie. They are two different experiences, and that's what that's what our business is built on. That's what we intend for our customers. When you sit in our room, the world around you should dissolve, it should disappear, and you should become part of whatever that experience is that you're having, and you should be absorbed in it, and like I talked about, that willing suspension of disbelief. You should feel like you're floating in the room, and that you are just integrated into this experience. And I don't think you can get that in a lounge room. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to have a TV and a sound system in a lounge room, that's fine. I've got that at home. That's not a crime. We don't send the AV police around. But, if you're looking for a cinematic experience, for that kind of romantic go to the movies feeling, and the lights start to dim, I mean, there are so many subtle things, right? You can turn off a light, boom, it's gone. Or you can just dim them slowly. And that's the thing that starts to send the chills up your spine, because the next thing is the 20th Century Fox logo or the Universal logo or whatever it's going to be. And then the anticipation starts. And if you've achieved that, then you've built a great cinema, you know. And it's all these subtle bits and pieces.
I think one of the questions we get asked all the time, and I've just noticed it in your chats as well, is a lot of people, the fact that they always... at the moment, there's a thing about OLEDs and the fact that TVs are brighter and they're more accurate. Andrew was going to do a video about this as well, because...
I was going to say, let's debunk this, where it says OLEDs are more revealing and more clinical. Let's debunk that right now. This is from somebody that probably hasn't seen what a legit 4K projection screen can look like. So debunk the detail. If anything, the projection screen is going to show more detail because the image is so much larger. It's going to be harder to see on a smaller screen. It's like watching a 4K video on your 4K phone. It's going to look ultra detailed because it's so tiny, but you're not going to see all the detail because it's so damn small. That little 65-inch or 75-inch TV you see, it looks nice, but you're not really seeing all the detail because it's so damn small, unless you're about a foot from the screen. Whereas if you get a native well, doesn't maybe not native 4K projector, you're gonna see all those details in like its full glory because it's blown up, it's expanded. You're gonna see all of that.
Well,
You're
especially
not
if
gonna
it's calibrated.
experience that. Yeah, especially if it's calibrated too. So you're not blowing out your highlights. You're not crushing detail. But
I
go
can
ahead.
hear
Go ahead.
Andrew loading his gun here about detail and dynamics and tone mapping, and shoot away, Andrew, shoot away.
Okay, probably the first thing is, it's more clinical. I'm not sure I want clinical, but look, here's the thing. The big thing at the moment is OLEDs and blacks, and it's like, okay, all right, and even projectors, it's like I'm buying a JVC because it's got great blacks. That's one end of the equation, and where we get really lost in all of this is a greater understanding. Okay, so let's say you've got a TV or a projector, doesn't really matter what it is, and this is its black level here, but here's its white level, right? So you have a dynamic range that's that big. Now let's say you've got a projector that has slightly lesser blacks, and that's there, but your whites are up here. You now have a far greater dynamic range that you're dealing with. So look, I love OLED TVs, not a problem, and in the right environment with the right ambient light, they can be great. But let's say you're punching 600 or 800 nits, okay, and yes, you can have perfect blacks. But if you go to a TV that's punching, say, 1200 nits, and it's got slightly lesser blacks, and perceptually, often in a lit room, you often can't tell the difference anyway, then you have a greater dynamic range. So you're actually going to see more detail on that TV. We are getting absorbed literally by this, obsession with black levels. And yes, look, a good black, I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to say, you don't want good blacks. Of course you do, but you want good, clear, well-defined and accurate white levels. And the further apart the two are, the better the image is. There's a lot of professional colorists who are using LED TVs, because what happens with OLEDs is as they reach the upper limits, and we see this when we're calibrating, when you get to 100% white, the RGB starts to separate. They can't produce the colors. They're pushed to their absolute limits. So you get this dispersion and separation in color accuracy at the high end with OLEDs. With RGB, they can produce a more consistent white balance, or red, green, blue, at higher levels. So some colorists actually prefer to use LEDs, and that's the reason. So it's not just a question of great blacks, and I think at the end of the day, it's all relative. You have to look at literally the bigger picture and understand that dynamic range. Where are my hands? That dynamic range that you're dealing with. Great blacks is one, but it's only one part of the equation. What if you've got great blacks, but you've got really rubbish red, green, blue, say magenta, yellow, right? Well, so what? You've got great blacks. We've got a video on YouTube called Color Space. I can't remember the exact title of it at the moment. But one of the things that makes a big difference in different types of projectors are how they produce their red, green and blue. Together they can make a nice strong white, but each colour on their own is not that powerful. Now, something like, if you look at why the Ben QX 12000H, or I think the 9060 as it was in the US, is because it was an LED and it could produce really good saturation, so good hue and saturation and luminance of each discrete color. So when you looked at color on a screen, it was much, much brighter perceptually and actually than another projector that had the same luminance or same lumen output. So yeah, I mean, would I rather watch an OLED TV or a projector? Give me a projector any day. Give me a well set up, well calibrated projector. And not a lot of people, to be honest, have seen a really, really well calibrated projector. So I hope that kind of demystifies some of that.
Projectors are better. End of discussion.
Thank you.
No,
I was trying to be subtle.
Kidding, but... I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding for the TV fans out there. TVs are still fine.
No, look,
for the living room.
I'm a big fan of TV, But is and this is an interesting argument. Is TV cinema? I don't think so. Not yet.
People don't go to the movie
and
theaters
still,
to look at a TV. That's
yeah, I haven't yet
Yeah,
walked into
I've
a
never seen
commercial
that
cinema
before.
and seen a TV there.
Yeah.
They've tried. Same thing. I've tried.
Yeah. Oh, have you seen that in person? There.
No, there was an article about it in one of our magazines over here, and I think what were they using, Andrew? Like it was a whole heap of X amount of size panels put together, and it was essentially one big 250-inch TV.
I did.
But again,
I did see the. I saw the Sony CLED or whatever it's called, Cletus.
Yeah,
I did see that. It was. They had it at one of their announcement shows, whatever. They're showing off some new OLED TV, and it was it was humongous. And I remember walking into the room, I was like, "Holy shit!" I was like, "That is an amazing projector, and it's lit up in here." And we're looking for the projector in the back, and we're like, "Yo, that is that big TV screen." And we got up close to it, and you kind of, when you got close to it, you can see the little the lines where they put the panels together. But at a distance, it was pretty amazing. It was literally a gigantic television set. It wasn't like a movie screen, but it was just a big gigantic TV. Like it was crazy. It was crazy bright.
How did that feel to you watching something like that? Did it? I mean, this term cinematic gets thrown around a lot, but
it was more like going to I don't know if you've ever been to like a baseball game. They had like the big TV screen there. It was like that, just sharper. Yeah.
And
So it was like
I
that.
I think something about that's just for me is a little bit harsh. If you could dial it back, but I'm kind of still a big fan of this reflected light kind of look. But
Yeah, I think because the TVs they're direct light, so it's like a flashlight shining at your face rather than bouncing off at you. So it's softer. It's a little bit softer, yeah, for sure. Next question here goes to part of the budget into building a home theater, which I think probably should be near the top of the list. How much of your budget should you put towards furniture? Because let's face it, the furniture is the only thing that you're constantly touching all the time.
Enjoy.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one because just yesterday we had someone. There's some fantastic furniture out there that is really good value for money for seats, and at the same time we kind of go, look, seat wise, ultimately, how many seats, how many people are going to be watching a movie at any one time? What are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing 2 seats over 4 seats, or what do we want out of those seats? Do we want the comfort? I'm a big bloke. For me, I want comfort, but that could mean that you're spending $2,000 a chair. What do you want those seats to do? A lot of the seats that we like to use are the ones that kind of recline into themselves, so you can go harder up against the back row or each other. But I think, seats are always a thing that I tend to leave out of quotes till right at the end, because we try and determining, we don't want 40%, 50% of that budget spent on furniture. But at the same time, it does play a very important role. And, in these days, people watching more and more movies need to be comfortable. As much as, I'd love to sit through 4 hours of Zack Snyder's Justice League cut, but, if the seat's not comfortable, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. So over here, it's a bit different. I don't know. You guys have got more probably accessible to more seating options like Valencia and all that. We're a little bit limited here in Australia. There's not a lot of them. But, for dedicated cinema rooms, they tend to always be around the, $1,400 a chair, up to 15, up to 18, up to $2,000, up to $2,500 a chair. Australian, yeah. And then obviously, at the same time, nice comment. At the same time, you can get some fantastic chairs from, your kind of, I think you guys might call Best Buy or Costco, lounges, for a couple grand that will suffice. So it really comes down to what you're looking for and what, what you're really trying to aim for, I guess.
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but you know, people often want to single out a component and go, you know, what should I do with this? And it's like, I don't know, not until we know the rest of the jigsaw. You know, what is the focus here? You know, so discussion and planning and design. I mean, we're just, you know, I really can't stress enough how that makes everything work together. You know, if you say to us, I really want great sound and picture and I want to do this and this and this, and then at the end of the journey we go, oh, well, we've only got this much left over, but we really want these seats. Well, it's okay, well, let's start off with 1 or 2 seats. We can buy the rest later, maybe when you've got some funds. What are your priorities? You know, discussion with your customer, understanding what they want to achieve, you know, understanding what the long game is for them. You know, that's why, to me, going into a store and them saying to you, oh, you need these speakers, this amplifier, this projector and screen, and there you go, that's done. It's like, wow, how can you ever get a good result doing that? You know, so I really urge people, whether you're doing it on your own, is start the process and look at each thing. And we go round and round in circles all the time, just going, okay, so we want to achieve this, or we can't achieve it because of that, so we need to modify this. And so seats are important, yes, but at the end of the day, you can add those later, you know. So there might be a little bit of discomfort, but you know, are you really going to go for, you know, perhaps cheaper speakers or less channels or whatever it is, just because you wanted to have, you know, real leather instead of fake leather, or whatever your decision is?
I will say, as part of the real leather versus fake leather, I remember when I first started my channel back in 2016, maybe 17, I had fake leather. And since doing all my movie reviews and watching, the fake leather did peel over time. So
Yeah,
I
of
am a
course.
firm believer in real leather. Do
Real
not
leather.
buy the fake stuff because it's not good.
No, we definitely don't ever sell that type of stuff. But no, you're right. And I guess the whole comfort thing and the fact that, especially if you use it every day, I mean, most of the jobs we do and our viewers, they'd be in their cinema nearly every day. So we've got some row 1 chairs. I mean, I'm 150 kilos. I'm a big bloke, and my row 1 chairs after 4 years still look brand new. And that's because we're, you know, using that Italian luxury leather. So, you know, I'm a big believer of that as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Last Patreon question that I have here. How do you isolate bass in an apartment?
Moved.
Go off you go, Andrew.
So, soundproofing or sound isolation is a big deal. Within reason, you know, and there's always exceptions. Soundproofing is almost, no, it's not impossible, but it's expensive. If you're really going to soundproof a room, then you need to build an entire isolated shell within the room that's in, and you have to make sure there's no penetrations or connections to the apartment. Isolating bass especially, I mean, low frequency sound, that's how submarines communicate around the world. They can send a low frequency signal literally around the planet. Low frequency travels. And so, you know, we can kill off high frequency sound fairly easily, but low frequency sound just travels. So in an apartment, that's going to be a challenge. And if you are talking about really stopping low frequency sound, you're talking about either a big project or an expensive project, depending on whether you're doing it yourself. But the key is an isolated box. You're going to need a frame. You're going to need like furring clips and isolation clips. You're going to need double layers of drywall. You're going to need mass-loaded vinyl. There's a lot of lengths you're going to have to go to, and just bear in mind any HVAC penetration that comes into the room, any cabling holes, any connection with the ongoing building is going to pass that on. It's a tough call, and often, you know, people come to us and say, we want a soundproofed room. I'm like, well, again, you know, what's your budget like? You know, you're going to spend a lot of money or time or effort to get that right. So isolating an apartment, tough call. I really don't know what else to say other than that. You know, if you're going to play big loud bass, then you better get on with your neighbours.
Not gonna happen then. I believe Mel asked me that question. Mel, it's not gonna happen unless you're loaded. Okay, buddy. Um, question here. Take a couple of questions here that we had popped through. I just seen it, man. Just scroll. Here it is. From Mr. James Garrison, is a 12-foot by 19-foot by 12-foot high room big enough for a home theater room? I'm planning to convert a room into a home theater.
I got a very similar question to this yesterday when we were talking about this. Pretty much, my philosophy is any room can be turned into a home cinema as long as it's designed and planned. We have done a room that was, I think it was 3.5 meters by 4, which is, can't think of that in feet at the moment, but
11, 12 feet or something.
Yeah, and they spent $300,000. I mean, the room is essentially our drawing board. I mean, designing anything in that space, as long as there's a budget, we can make anything work. I mean, there's a guy yesterday inquired with me. He's turning an old study into a cinema, and that's 3 meters by 3.5 meters. You know, so I think height is an interesting thing. We've worked with some rooms that are quite low in height, but obviously, again, you plan it, you do the measurements, you know, use the right speakers, and everything is doable. But that's my take on it. So, Andrew?
No, I totally agree. I mean, the room we finished yesterday was 4 meters square, so it's 369. It's roughly 12 feet square. So his room, which is 4 meters by 6.5 meters, I think, with a 12-foot high ceiling, that would make a very nice home theatre.
Yeah, it's a really nice one. It's big.
Yeah,
it's
really
long.
well.
It's 19 feet. Yeah. I have no idea what meters is, but I know 19 feet is pretty long.
Yeah, I'm looking at the feet and I'm going, oh, hang on.
No, but definitely any room can work, and as long as it's planned, and there's plenty of people out there that do what we do with room designs, and people even on a global scale, and as long as those people, and we always try and push the whole certification thing, as long as those people are certified, and look, I'm still learning every day. Andrew is the brains of the operation. I'm just the good looks, but you know, even myself, who's been in this industry for a long time, you know, always learning. But I always come down to this one question: how many people are going to be in that room? You know, if you've got a family of 6, you know, a family of 8, and it's a small room, there's going to be limitations. You know, and you know, who spends more time in that space? Is it just you in the sweet spot at all times? Do we base the whole room around that one person and screw everyone else so they can just sit on beanbags or something, you know? So, but yeah, I mean, like,
with your customers, what are your priorities?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, look, I mean, any room works. But if you've got a big family, then of course we're going to have challenges.
How do I go about figuring out the size and power of my speakers according to my room size?
Andrew, you love this. Power calculations.
The easy answer is use a calculator. Go online for speaker and amplifier power. Put in the distance to your sweet spot. Put in the numbers for your amplifier and your speaker, and that will give you an approximate. What you're looking for is 105 decibels at your seating position, which is generally sort of the middle of most of the seats. If your speakers can achieve that, then you need to try and find some way to find out, depending on the brand, whether that's distortion free at 105 dB SPL. But go online and look for those calculators. You can find them, and then just plug in the sensitivity of your speakers, the power of your amplifier, and that will give you a guideline at least to know whether you're there. If you can deliver 105 dB or more at that distance, then you're starting to look good.
Now remember, guys, I know we've got a few more people coming into the chat here. Enzo, you want to tell them about the contest that you guys are running over there?
Oh yeah, so what we were thinking, talking to Shane for a while, and our guys from our channel watching this might not even know who Shane is. Shane's got a fantastic channel, does heaps of reviews, heaps of fantastic 4K movie reviews, and I've been a big fan of Shane's over the last 4 years, and we had this idea of working together and kind of going, all right, well, you've got different subscribers to us, some crossover, obviously, but anyone that comes over and subscribes to us, obviously, we'll factor in over the next couple of weeks who's also subscribed to Shane's, and we'll give away a free room design, which obviously, depending whether it's a new room or an established room, it doesn't matter. We can obviously do anything. And that means that those people get to work quite closely with myself and Andrew, and build that relationship and maximizing your space and your existing equipment if you've got existing equipment, or looking at starting from scratch.
This is like a $2,000 value. And if you guys do come over from the chat here from this video, make sure you guys comment on one of their videos. Let them know that you actually did watch this stream, and that will make it easier for them to pick a winner.
Absolutely.
So who's going to win this extravagant prize of room design for your future home theater? And also, since we're talking about subscribing, guys, I also have a Patreon as well. So if you guys want to get up with me, you can contact me any time of the day if I'm awake, for as little as $1 a month, up to $10 a month. Listen, there's all kinds of good treats if you sign up for Patreon. I got a bunch of my Patreon guys here in the chat now. Tristan's up in here, keeping up with the Joneses. If you're a long-time Patreon subscriber, I'll even make you a moderator and in these future podcasts. But for as little as $1 a month, listen, you get some exclusive content, discounts on AV equipment. I'm partners with Value Electronics. So if you're here in the US, you want to buy a new Denon receiver, a Marantz receiver, an NAD, a Bowers & Wilkins, a Trinov, whatever it is, listen, if you are a Patreon subscriber, then I will save you some money going directly from them. Who knows? Maybe if you sign up, I might be able to save you some money in Australia as well with these guys. So for as little as $1 a month, sign up. For $10 a month, listen, I'll even video call you on Skype, on FaceTime, whatever. We can talk about your marital problems, whatever you got. Sign up on Patreon. So that's available for you guys. Links are going to be in the video's description down below. So that's plugging our channels and Patreon, guys. I don't think you guys have a Patreon yet, but I think you guys are going to sign up for one.
No, we've actually but we're just
done.
working on that.
Been too busy.
We've been very busy, so we got some big things happening over here. We've just picked up the keys to a new showroom, which is going to be quite big. We'll have 3 rooms up there showing people 3 different levels of cinema, and it's going to be a few busy months ahead for us, that's for sure.
It's going to be a head turner. We'll keep you posted on this one. One of the rooms is going to be absolutely sensational. So, yeah.
And if these guys in the chat are looking for home theater gear and any kind of information, or if they just want to buy something, you guys do ship like worldwide, or
well, depends on the products, but yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're servicing at the moment. I've got a list I've just put up. We've got a couple of jobs in America, 2 in Canada, 2 in New Zealand. We're helping some people in Jakarta at the moment. There is a gentleman in Italy I'm talking to. There's Portugal and a gentleman over in Mother Russia. So we're trying to help everybody at the moment.
That's good. And you guys are going to be doing some updates on your channel soon, right? With your new space, your new stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
Some big
We'll keep you posted. Yeah.
Some big announcements coming that way.
All right, man. I think that's going to wrap it up, man. Unless you guys got something else you want to talk about.
No, I just want to say what an awesome channel you've got, and thank you so much for inviting us on. This is an amazing, sport hobby, and there's so much to it that 20 years of constant learning, and the more I learn, the more I realise how much more there is to learn. So, it's a great field to be in, and at the end of the day, when we open the doors to a cinema for a client, and we've had them burst into tears. They're so happy. So. It's a good field to be in, and your channel's contributing really well. So it's great to be chatting with you and with your viewers. So thank you.
Awesome, Andrew. Yo, thank you for coming on so late at night. Well, early for you
For
guys,
you.
late for me.
For you.
It's lunchtime there.
Late for me. But guys, if you guys want to listen to the audio portion of this podcast, you don't want to look at our faces, I will post the podcast up on iTunes, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, whatever it is, however it is that you get your podcast fix on for your morning drive in the morning. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe over to Home Theater Engineering YouTube channel. Visit their website as well. Also, sign up for Patreon. Help out the cause over here. I'm trying to feed the fam. I gotta feed my mouth, you know. Sign up for Patreon. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in the next one.